It was my 30th birthday. I hadn't expected a grand celebration, just a dinner, maybe a small cake, and a little time with family. I had spent years putting everyone else first. When Dad had surgery, I was the one who moved back in for 3 months to care for him. When Mom needed help with groceries during lockdown, I drove across town every week to help, even though no one asked my younger brother Mark to lift a finger. I thought, surely, after all these years of showing up, they'd show up for me. But 3 days before my birthday, I got a group text from my mother that made my stomach drop. "Hey, sweetie, we decided not to do anything this year. At your age, birthdays aren't really a big deal anymore. Hope you understand." That was it. No apology, no explanation, not even a phone call. I blinked at the screen, stunned. For a moment, I convinced myself they were planning a surprise, that surely there was something more behind this casual dismissal. But as the day got closer, the silence only got louder. Then, on the morning of my birthday, I opened Instagram. There it was, balloons, banners, and a cake shaped like a golden retriever. "Happy 3rd birthday to Sir Barks-a-Lot," my mom had captioned it, tagging my brother and proudly displaying photos from what looked like a full-blown party in the backyard, complete with a doggy treat table and guests. Mark's dog had gotten my birthday. I stared at the photos in disbelief. I wasn't just being ignored. I'd been replaced by a Labrador in a birthday hat. The worst part? No one even bothered to hide it from me. No text, no call, not even a leftover slice of cake. The message was clear. You don't matter anymore. I sat alone in my apartment that night, blowing out a single candle on a cupcake I'd bought myself. No one sang. No one clapped. I wasn't even sure if they remembered I existed. But in that silence, something inside me shifted. I wasn't just hurt. I was done. Done waiting for validation from people who saw me as an afterthought. Done being the backup plan, the emergency contact, the invisible sibling who didn't need anything. And as I sat there in the dim light, staring at that ridiculous dog party online, I whispered to myself, they just canceled the wrong person. 2 weeks passed after the dog's birthday party. I didn't answer their texts, not that there were many. Just one from Mom. "Hope you're not upset. We figured you'd be too busy for a family thing. Mark really wanted to do something for the dog, and it was cute." Cute. Replacing your daughter with a Labrador was cute. But I didn't argue. I didn't fight. I simply went quiet. That kind of silence unnerves people more than shouting ever could. What they didn't know was that my silence had a plan. You see, what my parents had never really paid attention to was my work. While they praised Mark for every average thing he did, getting hired at Dad's company, getting a dog, baking banana bread, I had spent the last 6 years building a small tech startup from my living room. I never asked them for help, never brought it up at dinners, never waved it in their faces. Maybe that's why they thought I wasn't doing much. But I was. Quietly, methodically, I built something real. And just 6 months before my birthday, we had closed a major acquisition deal. A much larger company bought us out, and I walked away with enough money to never need to look at a grocery store discount tag again. I didn't spend it on cars or vacations, not right away. No, I spent the first month watching how my parents still praised Mark for looking into real estate, how they bragged about him almost getting promoted, how my mother would post photos of their Sunday brunches with him and his dog while I wasn't invited, not once. Then one day I did what they never thought I could. I contacted the real estate agency that managed their house. I found out it had been refinanced twice. Turns out they weren't doing as great as they made it seem, and because Dad's business was slowly sinking under debt and poor management, they were late on property taxes and had ignored multiple maintenance violations. The opportunity came wrapped in red tape and bank warnings, but to me, it looked like a ribbon on a gift. Through a discreet third party, I bought the outstanding liens, then the mortgage, then the house itself, under a holding company name, of course. I even kept the same property manager so they wouldn't notice the change. Until they did. One afternoon, I got a text from Mom, confused and panicked. "Some guy just dropped off papers saying the house was under new ownership? What's happening?" I waited a day before replying. "Read the signature on the documents. That's who owns it now." She didn't respond. Neither did Dad. But the calls started the next morning. I didn't answer. Instead, I wrote them a formal letter. No insults, no anger, just truth. I told them that the girl whose birthday they said didn't matter now owned the house they built their perfect little world in, that the woman they left alone with a cupcake had been busy becoming someone they'd never recognize, and now they'd have 60 days to vacate. No exceptions, no extensions. They didn't believe it, until the for sale sign appeared in their yard 3 days later. Mark called me, furious. "Are you actually kicking Mom and Dad out? What the hell is wrong with you?" I answered calmly. "Nothing's wrong with me, Mark. I'm just finally treating them the way they treated me." He sputtered and called me names, but I didn't care, because I wasn't doing this out of hate. I was doing it for closure. Then, to top it off, I did something poetic. I scheduled a new birthday party. 1 month later, on the exact day of Sir Barksalot's next dog spa appointment, I hosted an elegant rooftop event, inviting friends, mentors, my team, even some extended family. There were no puppies in party hats, just laughter, champagne, and a view of the city skyline. When the photos went online, I made sure to tag every single one with, "Happy to finally celebrate a birthday that matters." The comments exploded. Some from distant cousins who were shocked I'd finally come out of my shell. Others who quietly messaged me saying they always saw the favoritism but never knew how to say it. And my parents? Silent. Again. But this time, it was the silence of people who realized they had been erased from the center of someone's life, and didn't even notice until they were already written out. A few weeks after the rooftop party, things started to settle. The house I had taken from my parents, the one they always said was our family's pride, was finally empty. I didn't throw their stuff on the lawn. I wasn't that person. Instead, I hired a moving company and had all of their belongings carefully boxed and sent to a small rental apartment I secured for them in the outskirts of town. It was simple, cramped, and definitely not what they were used to. But it was enough. I wanted them to feel discomfort, not destruction. But Mark? He took it personally. He showed up at my apartment one evening, furious and red-faced. "You've lost your mind," he said. "You ruined Mom and Dad. Over what? A birthday?" I looked at him, and for the first time in my life, I didn't feel small. I didn't feel less than. I felt solid. "No," I replied calmly. "I ruined the illusion that they were ever good to me. That birthday was just the final nail in a coffin they'd been building for years." He left after slamming the door so hard it rattled the hallway. I didn't stop him. The next few months were quiet. Mom stopped calling. Dad, too. There were no more condescending family group messages, no passive-aggressive guilt trips, just a cold, hard silence. The kind I had once been so terrified of, but now found peace in. I poured myself into work, expanded my business, and began mentoring other young women in tech. And with each passing month, I felt more like the woman I was always meant to be, confident, capable, and free of the emotional chains that had kept me seeking approval from people who never saw me. And then came the twist no one expected. It was mid-December. I received a call from the building management at the apartment where I had relocated my parents. "Ms. Carter," the manager said gently, "your father was taken to the hospital last night. We believe he had a stroke." My chest tightened, not from sadness, but from the cruel weight of the past colliding with the present. I sat with that moment. I could have ignored it. I could have left them to deal with the mess on their own. But something inside me, something deeply human, told me to go. I arrived at the hospital, unsure of what I'd say. My mother was there, looking small and aged in a way I'd never seen before. Her makeup wasn't done. Her voice was hoarse. Her eyes lit up when she saw me. But it wasn't joy. It was desperation. "He's stable," she whispered. "But he can't speak. Not well. And he keeps asking for you. He thinks he failed you." I walked into the room. Dad was lying there, frail and hooked to machines, but awake. When his eyes met mine, Tears rolled down his cheeks. He tried to speak, but his words were slurred and broken. Still, I understood. I pulled a chair beside him. I didn't hold his hand, but I stayed. "I don't forgive you," I said quietly. "But I'm not here for revenge anymore. I'm here because I needed to know that the man who erased me from his life finally sees that I existed." His eyes squeezed shut, and in that moment, I realized poetic justice isn't always loud. Sometimes it's a whisper in a hospital room. Sometimes it's knowing you've become everything they said you'd never be without ever needing them to clap. A week later, he was discharged. I didn't go back. But one morning, a letter arrived. From my mother. Inside was a photograph. An old one. Me on my 6th birthday, holding a hand-drawn card with a cake I had clearly baked myself. On the back, she had written, "You were always worthy. We just weren't worthy of you?" That day, I took a deep breath, walked to the fireplace, and tossed the letter in. Not out of spite, but to burn the last piece of guilt I carried. The following week, I returned to the family home, now renovated, redesigned, and mine. I stood on the porch, sipping coffee. A young couple walked by, admiring the house. They smiled and said it looked beautiful. "Thanks," I replied. "It took a long time to make it feel like home." But it